ultimate health journey with I myself, Angel Conway, Jovi Marie, our behind the scenes Alice Boswell, and the one and only Dr. Phillip Zinni. We are so excited to bring you all a great message today about weight loss. Dun, dun, dun. Who hasn't wanted to or knew someone who wanted to lose some weight, right? Get rid of that muffin top, shed some baby weight, all that good stuff. So, without further ado, Dr. Phillip Zinni, take it away.
Well, thank you for that kind introduction. So I made a bunch of notes for this. So you may see me looking down occasionally, and that's just because I want to make sure that I got all my notes correct. The big thing we're going to talk about is the quote unquote weight loss medications that are out there. Usually it's the big injectable ones. They go by the generics of semaglutide, tirzepatide, and others. You probably heard of brand names like Ozempic, Wegovy, uh, things like that. And there's a lot of good things and unfortunately some bad things about them. So we'll just dive in and talk a little bit about what they are. So the whole broad class is called a GLP-1. What that means is that it's a glucagon-like peptide, and what it does in your body is it tells your body to maybe feel a little bit more full, to stop eating. It tells the pancreas to produce more insulin. It tells the GI system to alter how it kind of processes the foods and moves things along. And all that is a very short or brief way of how it helps you reduce weight. Because if your pancreas is producing more insulin, that means it's going to take the glucose out of the bloodstream. That means that your kidneys are going to kind of dump it a little bit more. The motility or the GI system, by it processing things faster, there's not that much contact. So all that helps out with weight reduction. And all of that kind of stimulates the brain to say, hey, I'm not really that hungry right now, so I don't need that. So this whole big class of medicines try to mimic that natural substance that's produced in your body. And there's a bunch of drugs out there, like I mentioned, and the cost for them can be kind of steep. Just by looking at the literature, it's anywhere from about 10,000 a year all the way up to $16,000 a year. I have some patients that come in and they'll tell me that they're on them, and I've heard co-pays as little as $100 a month, but that's still about $1,200 a year. So it's still not inexpensive for those individuals. So the bottom line is it's out there, it's readily available, and it's being used kind of for the right reasons, but not really. So I'll pause there before I get into what the studies have shown about there and see if there's any questions because we're about 8 or 9 minutes into this.
So, yes, there's a question. So, with doing these weight loss
Mhm.
um, uh, options, does the means, outweigh any, possible negative side, negative side effects?
Yeah, so unfortunately, like I said, there's good side and there's a bad side. The good side is that there is uh, some weight reduction, and depending on which study you looked at, and of course, if you listen to the pharmaceutical industry, it's absolutely fabulous. And there's been anywhere from as low as a 5 pound weight reduction over about 8 months to as much as a 44-pound weight reduction in about a year and a half. But when you think about that, what we naturally tell people to do is reduce about a pound a week. So if you do it about a pound a week, that means 52 pounds in a year. So what's the difference? Right? So, yeah, people have reduced weight, to your point. So it seems like it kind of works. The downside, and I literally just read this story, or this study, I should say, yesterday. It came out of Western University, and it's titled Mapping the Effectiveness and the Risks of GLP-1 receptor agonists. Again, an agonist just means that it tells your body to do more of something. So the good thing that came out of the study was that there's a reduced risk of cardiovascular disease, of stroke, and Alzheimer's. Well, that kind of makes sense because if you're going to reduce weight, that means that naturally your blood sugar is going to go down, your blood pressure is going to go down, and the overall inflammation effect is going to go down. So it kind of makes sense that no matter what you do, if you reduce weight, reduce your blood sugar, well, that stuff's going to get better. But the downside, big downside, is that there's an increased risk of pancreatitis because you're telling the body to produce more insulin. It's kind of like squeezing the pancreas and say, come on, come on, come on, or beating a horse and saying, come on, move faster. Sorry for the horses. But your body just isn't designed to do that. So there's an increased risk of pancreatitis. There's an increased risk of diarrhea, nausea, vomiting. Because remember, we talked about it works in the GI system. You kind of move things along. So if you're moving things along, then you're going to have those kind of side effects. And it makes the kidney and the liver work harder. So those things have to constantly be watched. So yeah, there's some good side that you're going to reduce weight. But if you look at what we naturally talk about on this program on how to reduce weight, there's no side effects of losing weight naturally. So the what we call in the medical world the risk benefit kind of ratio, it's not there. I mean, the risk that you kind of expose yourself isn't worth the benefit when you can get that same benefit just by following a good common sense, common sense lifestyle, functional medicine approach, and using supplements. Looks like there's another question. Are there specific groups of people who should not take this medication? Very astute question. So anyone that has any type of GI issue already, and there's big classifications like IBS, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, any GI issues probably shouldn't be taking this. Anyone that has a propensity or may have a potential issue with pancreas problems, pancreatitis, shouldn't take it. So that means people with high triglycerides are usually at more of a propensity to have pancreatitis. They shouldn't take it. And then, of course, anyone with any type of onion disease or liver disease, they shouldn't be taking it. And unfortunately, most people that are overweight already have something called fatty liver um, because they're overweight. So you're kind of at risk for that. So yeah, not a good idea for them either. Again, that's why just doing things healthy. And I'll get on a little bit of a political soapbox. I was listening to some of the hearing for RFK Jr. To be the head of HHS, and he just got lambasted uh, for wanting to make America healthy again. And the only thing he wants to do is let consumers know what's in the foods. There are substances in our foods that are banned in Europe. How crazy is that? We're supposed to be this
That's
superpower
really
and
crazy.
have all these.
It
It's crazy, crazy. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox. Um, any other questions before I get on?
So there's Diane has a question, Dr. Phillip. How much weight loss or blood sugar control can I realistic expect? But I think you already hit that question. And then are there
Yeah.
any
So she. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. And then are there any interactions with my current medications or supplements?
Yeah. So that's the big issue. And I specifically have a chart for that, and I can't show it to you, so I'll just read it off. So anyone that has any issues with thyroid, we already mentioned GI issues, kidney, liver issues, pancreas issues. And another one we didn't mention is if there's, which is kind of crazy again, anyone with anxiety and depression, you're more at risk for suicide, um, which is probably one of the reasons why you're depressed anyway, or anxious
Oh,
anyway, because
wow.
you're overweight and you can't lose the weight. So it's crazy. So those are some of the things. As far as specific medications, um, I've not had anyone with specific medication kind of contraindications or where they wouldn't work together, except for, again, if something is primarily metabolized through the liver or the kidneys, then there may be an issue there for that one. And then her very first question was, what about blood sugar control? So I've seen people have fantastic drops in their A1C, like 1, 2, or even 3 points. Um, but again, um, one of the things that we're going to talk about a little later on, we might as well just jump into it now. Um, Only about 10% of people, once they stop the medication, keep the weight off. So that means 90% fail. So again, why don't you just do it kind of naturally with one of these lovely coaches, as opposed to trying to do it through pharmaceutical and injections? And you have a much better result because human nature is that people do better when they have a coach that comes alongside of them and makes them accountable and helps them with making daily kind of course corrections. So that's really the best thing to do.
So,
Ginger, I have a friend that, go ahead.
um, another question that we have is: are there any reasons for those statistics of majority of the people go on to fail?
Yes, because the body is being stimulated to produce too much of this GLP-1, of this glucagon uh, type of receptor agonist. So after the body goes off of it, then it drops to its normal kind of natural level. And as a result, you start getting hungry again. So if you haven't made any lifestyle changes, then you're just going to go back to your old eating habits because you've got this hunger trigger that wasn't adequately addressed, either psychologically, emotionally, physically. It just wasn't addressed. So that's why doing something naturally, like there's a product out there from a pharmaceutical, not a pharmaceutical, but a supplement company, pharmaceutical grade, called GLP-1 probiotic. So it tells the intestinal tract to naturally produce this.
Okay.
It's not forcing it, but it's giving the intestinal tract all the natural things it needs to naturally produce it. So that's a better way of doing it. And then plus anything that we can do to help the GI system to heal itself. So mangosteen is a wonderful product, and we have it in a spray form, which is highly bioavailable. So that helps the inflammation on the outside of the cell, specifically the intestinal lining. On the inside of the cell, helps out with making the cell produce good, healthy copies. There's the xanthomist, the mangosteen product, and then the glutathione product, that one. Thank you, Alice, behind the scenes. That's the glutamist product. So all these things naturally help the body to work better and also help the GI system to work better.
Oh, that's absolutely wonderful, Dr. Phillip. I know Ginger has another question. She says, I have a friend that has been on it for about maybe 2 years. She hasn't gained any weight and has no side effects, but I got on it and was sick all the time. I think I lost what? Lost from being something. I don't know what she means by that. So she didn't finish the sentence. So I guess she didn't get, or she got sick from using the actual GLP-1.
Right, right. So again, everybody is different. But
Mm-hmm.
what I took away from the first part of the question is she's been on it for 2 years. So it's almost like you're hooked on it. And you, God didn't make us with deficiencies. It's not like we need extra stuff. So if you can't do something naturally, or if you can't cure something naturally with supplements, then you got to look at something else. Um,
Yeah.
and then again, the last part of the question is everybody is different. Some people have no effects, and some people have disastrous effects. Um, I have one person that lost, I think, 50 pounds, something like that, 40, 50 pounds in 3 months, which is a lot. But she felt terrible. She could barely get herself off the couch, um, and her appetite was so suppressed, she had a hard time eating. So she ended up losing muscle mass, and that's not what you want. You want to lose fat weight, not muscle mass.
Mm-hmm.
And if your appetite is so suppressed that you can't get the calories in to move around, then the body is going to sacrifice muscle and burn muscle for energy first, because it's a lot easier than going into ketosis and burn fat. So again, everybody is different. So if you can do it more naturally, it's just much better to do it that way.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you on that.
Mhm.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Any other questions before I go on?
Well,
Don't see any. Oh,
I have a question.
Mhm.
If you're on that for 2 years, would that be a little bit like if you get off of it after 2 years, or can you be consistent with it that long, Dr. Phillip? Is that normal?
So it's not normal,
Okay.
because again, um, it sounds like maybe lifestyle change, um, healthy changes aren't incorporated.
Okay.
And the longer you take it, the more you're going to be at risk for all the bad things, like the really
Yeah.
bad things, like pancreatitis and suicide. So
Wow.
again, if you can get off of it, that would be the best thing for you. Again, question, Barbara, I don't understand. I tried everything to lose weight, diet, vegan, vegetarian pills, exercise, just couldn't lose weight. So um, what we're finding, Barbara, is that everything is tied to the gut. So unless you diagnose the GI system, you could be actually eating foods thinking they're healthy that your body is just intolerant to. So there's some functional medicine testing that we do that
Hmm.
looks at over 1,000 foods, and it tells you which foods you're intolerant to and which foods literally love your body back. And then by avoiding the bad ones, eating the good ones, you help to heal the gut, and replenish the normal bacteria that's supposed to be there, help
Hmm.
repair, and then maintain this new healthy GI system. And it's remarkable, because we find out people that have been on medicine for a long period of time for whatever it is, whether it's their diabetes, their cholesterol, high blood pressure, and they'll come in and say, medicine is not working, or I don't want to be on it. And then when we do this test, we find out that they're actually intolerant to some of the ingredients in the medicine. So that's why the medicine isn't working as well as it could be, for one thing. But more importantly, is that their gut, the GI system, isn't adequately functioning, and as a result, they're not really healing the body. They're just masking things. So when people hit a brick wall, I first look at the gut. Then the next thing I look at is thyroid, and the third thing is hormones. specifically female hormones. And if I can get those three things in line, then there's no stopping, and you'll see positive results.
And I totally agree with you with that, Dr. Phillip, because I know, remember when I started working with you as well,
Mhm,
it was my thyroid and everything looked normal with the regular thyroid test.
mhm,
So I know with the extra test that you did recommend, that's when we realized that it was the thyroid. And
mhm,
especially us women, we have to always be on the lookout and always check our numbers as well. I
mhm.
I believe at least once a year or every twice a year, if that's what you would recommend, Dr. Phillip.
Yeah, if you're in a maintenance stage annually, if you're trying to make changes every 6 months, Barbara had a follow up. She said she tried the lifestyle, but I'd be willing to bet, Barbara, that you didn't do an intense GI study in order to find out what was working, what wasn't working. And maybe that's why lifestyle didn't work for you because your body wasn't tolerating. And you said that the semaglutide worked, fabulous again, but my big concern is getting off of it because it's something you can't take for the rest of your life. So I would encourage you to seek out a functional integrative medicine physician to help you kind of wean off of it so that this way you can lead a life without medication. That's the whole goal, is to get off medication and stop feeding big pharma.
So I have a question. What sort of tests prerequisites is in place so that people are being treated on an individual basis with this stuff?
Uh, and yeah, that's the whatever you want to call it, $64,000, $10,000, whatever question, because most physicians out there um, won't do the extensive testing that needs to be done. You're lucky
Yep.
if you get an A1C. Mostly, it's a fasting blood sugar. You're lucky if you get a TSH, just to look at the high level of thyroid function. Um, they won't do the in-depth study into why you're having these typically pro-inflammatory reactions. So that's why you need insulin levels, C-peptide levels, hormone levels, a deep dive into thyroid, antibodies, reverse T3, free T3, and then the vitamins. So there's such a deep dive. Um,
Yeah. So it looks like Barbara also is sharing her doctor pulled her off 6 months ago. Thank you, Dr. Zinni.
you're very welcome, Barbara.
Thank you for
And
your
hopefully,
share.
yeah, thank you too. And hopefully you can maintain the weight reduction off of it. The last part of that, not only do physicians not order the in-depth tests, but they won't even think outside the box and do a functional medicine test, like a test that will give you the 1,000+ foods that you may not be agreeable with, and then tells us how different vitamins and minerals are being absorbed or not being absorbed. So there's a variety of other tests that tells us the status of the body um, that mainstream medicine won't check for, and the big part is because insurance doesn't cover it. So, um, but on the upside, I just did a big battery of tests on an individual, gave them the lab slip. They went to Quest, and Quest was going to charge them $1,700. Their insurance, they had a high deductible, so everything was going to be out of pocket. But we were able to go through a alternative lab, which is essentially like a big clearinghouse, and we were able to get her labs down to $600. So we saved her over $1,100. Same test, same, and it's even crazy because this company is a big clearinghouse. What they do is they contract with big lab vendors like LabCorp, like Quest. So she went back to Quest through this other lab clearinghouse, and it was only $600. So again, there's ways to get these big batteries of tests a lot less expensively. If you've got a high deductible insurance, or for some reason insurance doesn't pay for stuff, everybody is different. I have another guest who had the same panel of tests, and their copay was $125. So everybody is different, and every insurance is different. But we try to work with people and meet them where they're at, so this way we can try to save them as much money as possible.
Thank you so much for your work that you do to
You're
try to
welcome.
help us little folk out here. Thank you all for your participation, for your comments, for your questions. Keep them rolling in, okay? Anything on your side, Jovi? Any questions, comments that you would like to share?
No, no. Thank you, Dr. Phillip, for always helping us out and answering those questions.
You're very welcome.
So, is there by chance, if you develop one of the things, pancreatitis, um, how can then you start to reverse these conditions that you develop from uh, these things?
So unfortunately, pancreatitis is an emergency, and that's something you go to the emergency room. They usually put you on a liquid diet, pump you full of fluids, try to flush things out, get the GI system to calm down, and watch and wait. Sometimes they'll use steroids, but it's a watch and wait thing. It's pretty darn serious. That's why if you can avoid it, I would avoid any of these medications if you can. I mean, just the risk of it is not good, and especially if you have, like I mentioned before, any other underlying liver or kidney issues, um, high cholesterol, specifically high triglycerides, you might be more at risk of pancreatitis. It's like, why take the chance? And I'd be willing to bet that none of the physicians, maybe Barbara can chime in, I would imagine none of the physicians have sat down with them and said, you have a risk of pancreatitis, or you have a risk of suicide, and you might kill yourself. I'd be willing to bet a lot that no physician has ever sat down and said that. Because if they did, they would scare them off, and then they have to talk about something, and then that cuts into their 8 minutes of face-to-face time. So yeah, that happens.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sure too. So another question is, the test that you was referring to that um so the test that you was referring to, is that the same test as what people say eating for your blood type? Is that the same test that people would do to find out how to eat for your blood type?
There are some similar tests. Um, Specifically, eating for your blood type starts off with your blood type. Um, and then there may be some other similar ones, but not a lot. Michelle, do I need a doctor to be prescribed? Oh, absolutely, you do. Not only should you see a physician, but you should have a good, thorough examination to make sure you're not at risk for anything. And if you are at risk, then you should be made aware of it, and then you have to make that that choice. So whenever we talk about something, we always talk about the risks, the benefits, the advantages, the disadvantages, and what theoretically could go wrong. So there's always the pros and the cons, and the risk and the benefits, advantages, disadvantages. All those things have to be described, because if they're not, then that's not truly informed consent. And that's what informed consent is being told what the pros are, the cons, the risks, the benefits, advantages, disadvantages of all that stuff. Alice, yes, it's me. I was on a wait list for 9 months, no side effects. Yeah. Okay.
Nice. So as we wrap this on up. This has been a great discussion. Um, any last closing remarks on just how to do things naturally, how to lose weight naturally so that we don't have to use these medicines and have these nasty side effects and causes a whole host of other issues?
In 30 seconds or less.
The fundamentals.
Yeah. Um, I mean, the best thing and the easiest thing is try to eat as natural as possible. Try to shop on the outside of the grocery aisles, right? So that means fruits, vegetables, um, organic, lean meats. Get exercise, drink clean water, take some foundational supplements. Um, that's really about it.
Absolutely, Dr. Phillip.
Well, thank you all for tuning in for this week's health talk with Living Well, the ultimate health journey. We will see you back next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Until next time, be well.